very interesting comments so far from the Honorable Finance Minister and from Kunpiti on policy. However, both of you and your organizations are the ones actually bringing in the money into the country, channeling the actual flows. As we spoke about, Thailand is sitting on a net positive equity inflows this year. There's a possibility that investment interest in the country will rise as the rest of the region slows. The nature of trade finance will change. I want to jump straight, Khun Pakorn, if I may. Do you expect these equity inflows to continue as we go through the year?
When you look at the fund flow, especially in the equity market into Thailand, it actually starts since the third or fourth quarter of last year, when we start to have the recovery of the export, which has been growing quite significantly. And for this year, when you look at the recovery in Thai market, you can see that actually the recovery are not that in all sectors yet. We call it the K-shaped recovery. The sector that has been recovered the most would be the export sector and technology sector and agriculture and food. Those are the sectors that has been recovered very well so far. However, the other part of the industry that hasn't been recovered yet might be something like travel, logistics, like the restaurant and hospitality and healthcare. Those are things that actually hasn't been recovered fully yet. And when you look at this, even though we only have like half of our industry recovered, but on the listed company number, you will find that the earnings of the listed company already surpassed the total earning before the COVID. So it means that we start to have some recovery, and it has been quite good. However, it can be better. That's why I think that would be one of the reasons why the equity fund flow start to come back into Thailand.
Khun Chartsiri, earnings have surpassed COVID. On an economic front, the Bank of Thailand says that growth will reach pre-pandemic levels as early as this year, probably, or next year. And yet, we see strong headwinds to global growth. We see a slowing China, Thailand's largest trade partner. We see a strong exchange rate that's complicating policy. Could you help us understand how businesses such as yours are adjusting your stance in this changing environment?
Yes, I concur with what the Minister as well as the Assistant Governor Kunpiti was talking, as well as Khun Pakorn. I think the Thai recovery has been on a steady basis last year and continue to do this year with a strong export sector, which has been performing quite reasonably well. At the same time, now that the tourism is also picking up, estimate this year to be about 10 million tourists, although a quarter of the total that we used to achieve at 40 million, but it's a significant portion that will help also drive the domestic economy. Next year, I think many of the infrastructure projects that have been awarded and would also be moving forward. So we will see more of the capital expenditure taking this place next year. So it's moving forward on the orderly basis, which also will trickle down and will benefit to the smaller customers and individuals eventually. At the same time, you can also see that many of our corporates are also quite strong, and also they expand into the region through the regionalization, and some of them on the global basis. I think those also look for new opportunities as well as new markets in the region.
Where do you see your new markets for Bangkok Bank?
I think Asia certainly will be a very important part over the next 10, 20 years to come. I think China obviously will lead the whole region for this coming century, and eventually will also be India, and of course I hope ASEAN, especially with a strong Indonesia base, which probably will help lead the ASEAN economy moving forward. So the regionalization will be quite an important place. Vietnam is also coming quite strong, so is the Philippines.
Sticking with the theme of regionalization, playing a bit of an antagonist here, yes, Thailand is taking care of the last man and woman, is keeping interest rates steady. You're taking care of your customers in a situation where global interest rates are rising much faster. But that also means that the Thai savers have limited options for investing their money. Khun Pakorn, if I may ask you this question, is the Stock Exchange of Thailand bringing in new products where the domestic savers can invest their money in for healthy returns? Where would you advise the Thai people to put their money?
That's a very good question. With this kind of climate, you will notice that a lot of investment has a lot of correlation. Unlike previously, when pre-COVID, when you look at the return on investing in various products, various markets, you can still get a lot of diversification factors. But at the moment, I would say the correlation has become very much like one. This is why I would say that in order to invest in any investment opportunity nowadays, we need a story. What would be a story that you believe? What would be a story that you think would give you a sustainable growth, sustainable profit? For example, for Thailand, when we are trying to do the roadshow and we show our listed company performance to the global investors, we are coming with a theme. For example, nowadays you might see that many listed companies in Thailand actually don't just invest in Thailand. They become a regional company, they become a global company. We call that global exposure company, or we call it CLMV exposure company. And if you believe that the economy in those countries or in those regions gonna grow, this is how you should invest, because it's on the Thai company who are doing business over there. Or on the other hand, another example, what is the strength of Thailand? I would call that tourist industry, restaurant industry, hotel, and healthcare. So we come up with a well-being index and have a list of the companies that are doing those kind of business and show it to the investor and saying that if you believe that Thailand are good at this, this is the way that you should invest in Thailand. Or sustainability index, because Thai companies have been doing so well in these ESG practices and all the sustainability concept. We come up with a THSI, Thailand Sustainability Index, and also get a lot of index providers to come in and evaluate us on the basis of the sustainability. So those are the stories that we try to sell to our investors, not just that you need to diversify across product, diversify across the region, but also it got to be story.
And Khun Chartsiri, how does Bangkok Bank see Thailand's story, and how do you see the story of your own business?
Of course, Thailand is a very important market. It's our home base, and we see many good opportunities that will be shown over the next 5 to 10 years. I think to expand on Khun Pakorn's point, the SEC and the Bank of Thailand also have been trying to use, as you point out about the savings in Thailand, how can we also be providing funding for the region with different capital market instruments and others. And so standardization and harmonization of many of the regulations across the region so that different countries can also use, companies can use Thailand to raise the funding. For us, apart from Thailand, we see that the region will be a very important part. Our presence with some 30 offices in some 30 economies, mostly in Asia, and with London and New York. Then we also have another 270 branches in Indonesia through Permata Bank, which we make an acquisition in 2020. So we believe that the region will have a very strong growth potential. Vietnam also has a very strong growth rate, as you see that the first 9 months of this year grew over 8.8%, and the export sector already about $280 billion, which exhibit a very strong performance. The Philippines also upcoming. So I think the regionalization will be quite an important part, and we also supplement the security for the localization as well as moving the region forward.
Are you looking at any more acquisitions to push this regionalization strategy?
We have, for the time being, I think, Permata is a big baby, and also our presence in the region is also quite a good coverage. It will be, I think we can expand within what we have currently.
A question to both of you, taking off again on what you spoke about, regulations needed to expand this regionalization push. Khun Pakorn, what kind of regulations would you like to see to encourage more regionalization when it comes to offering more products from the Stock Exchange of Thailand to the entire ASEAN region?
At the moment, we have been working with many ASEAN exchanges and also the the big Asia exchange like China and Japan to work on the cross-listing of the product. For example, ETF, the exchange traded fund, and a product called derivative warrant. No, sorry, the depository receipt. In order to do the dual listing of that, we can get around the issue that each country doesn't want to do the fundraising in other country. In this case, each country can still do the fundraising in the home market. However, that security can be bought and construct as a new instrument called depository receipt or the ETF and sell it in foreign market. In that way, investor locally can start to invest outside of the country. In Thailand nowadays, there is one product. It's an ETF, the exchange traded fund of the Vietnam top 30 company listed in Ho Chi Minh Stock Exchange. Don't you believe that the trading value, half of that trading value in Ho Chi Minh Stock Exchange come from Thailand? So you can see that nowadays you don't have to do the cross-listing, but you can do the listing in the parent market and do the cross-listing to get the funding or liquidity from outside of the market. This is one of the things that we are trying to work with other ASEAN exchange and many other Asia exchange also to create this type of product. For example, you are a foreign investor investing in Thailand, and you are saying that, hey, I don't want to do the due diligence in Vietnam, Myanmar, or Laos or Cambodia. But if we have this product that getting all this stock or share from other country, at least in Thailand, they just do due diligence in Thailand, and they can invest in the region. Those are the type of the thing that we are working on.
Khun Chartsiri, there's an interesting experiment around in the region with several Asian central banks to push their own digital currencies. Do you think interoperability of digital currencies with Asia coming together, getting their payment systems to talk to each other, create this pool of liquidity in the region, would that be something that could really push the Asian market, Thailand being part of it, into, let's say, direct competition with Wall Street?
I think the trend is moving in that direction, and my understanding is the Bank of Thailand also has been working with the Hong Kong monetary authorities as well as the PBOC for the certain pilot on the digital currency, especially cross-border payment. I think so probably some more initiatives will be moving along that basis in order to create eventually the digital currency acceptance that would be on the official basis. And I think that will be a very important movement into the future. On the commercial side, the Thai Bankers Association and Bank of Thailand also have been working with other ASEAN banking associations in Singapore, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, Malaysia, the Philippines, for example, and even Cambodia on the QR code so that there will be the interoperability, use the same standardization, make it easier for money payment on the digital basis on the QR code. And I think that also will be expanding further. So by using certain standardization, not dissimilar to what Khun Pakorn is talking about, the standardization as a security registration, both on the debt and equity, so that make it easier for movement as well as a fundraising. This is on the payment side. This is also moving along that basis. On the trade side, for example, we are also using the R3 on the contour to do the payment system for the trade among some of our network between Bangkok and Jakarta and Vietnam, for instance. And this also would help reduce the operating costs and increase the efficiency.
So question to both of you. So you would say that there is room for ASEAN to stick with their own currencies, their own local currencies, and yet create a system where there's absolute frictionless flow of the currencies in a way that you no longer need the dollar?
I probably will not go that far, but I think each country probably will have its own currency, so that has certain level of abilities to pursue their own monetary exchange and fiscal policies, but yet also regional cooperation to provide support and stability. Just like in the 1997 crisis, I think Thailand and some other ASEAN countries got also strong support from China and Japan, for example, that have also stabilized the region. So I think probably similar to that type of scheme, that would also give more cushion and resiliency for the region.
Pakorn, what are you most excited about when it comes to all of the changes that you're seeing? Of course, Bangkok Bank has got great praises when it comes to digitalization, pushing technology. What makes you most excited in terms of the coming months, the coming years for the stock exchange and also for Thailand's economy overall?
I think we are in the time of very interesting time. There are so many things that change behavior of the investor, the behavior of the fundraiser, the technology, and the way that we have to become more like partnership than competitor. I think this is the era where maybe the new thinking would be so important. For example, when you look at the fundraising nowadays, you can go to the traditional market, raising fund from the bond market, go to Chartsiri Bank, go to the equity market. You can do all those very conveniently, but we still have new instruments, investment token, utility token, which at the moment are at the beginning of the stage of development. So we have so many things that we can look into. Even at the stock exchange, now we have the SET market as a main market for the medium-sized and big-sized company to do the fundraising. We have the MAI for the medium-sized company. And now we have a live exchange for the startup and SME. So you can see that nowadays we have so many ways that you can do these activities. On the investment, 10 years ago, when you talk about the investment in Thailand, most of the investment come from calling the marketing and let them do all the keying in the order. Nowadays, 90% of the transaction of the retail investor are online, are mobile. So you can see these are the behavior change, and technology actually come and help a lot of these kind of progress.
I think similar to digital currency, under Khun Pakorn's leadership, we are initiating the digital platform for the security settlement, payment settlement.
Settlement systems.
Yeah.
So that's why I mentioned that we are in the period of very interesting thing. So there are so many things. I didn't even touch up on the digital asset exchange. I didn't even touch up on the way that the exchange start to become more like capital market infrastructure. So there are so many things that we work into, but we got to prioritize and do something that most meaningful first.
So what is your priority?
At the moment, when you look at Thai capital market, there are two things that we have been a bit behind other developed exchanges. First, we don't have that many fundraising from foreign company. That is the first thing. And the second thing is that we don't have the access for the startup and SME to do the fundraising to the capital market. That's why you can see that we initiate many projects that involving that how can we get Thai investor to be able to invest abroad, and also foreign investor to be foreign company to be able to do the fundraising in Thailand. Nowadays they can do 5 ways. They can raise the money through the holding company structure, the primary listing, secondary listing, the REIT, and infrastructure trust. Those are the 5 things that now we start to allow the foreign company to be able to raise fund more conveniently in Thailand. And also we come up with a live platform and live exchange so that we start from grooming the startup to understand capital market. They give them the share service on those, like the way to manage their accounting, HR, IT, legal more easily. Get them to do the input of data into the system so that it can be done the due diligence easily. And then fundraising to have a meeting place for the people who want to invest in the startup and the startup company to meet. Those are the 2 things that, to me, is a very high priority, and we are trying to promote that nowadays.
It's interesting you mentioned startups, Khun Pakorn, because globally right now, the tech sector is undergoing severe headwinds as the global monetary cycle tightens. In the US, in my own country, India, we can see all of the startups are facing a lot of pressure when they come to refinance their money. I want to flip the question. I asked you, what are you most excited about? I want to ask Khun Chartsiri, what are you most worried about?
I think the growth potential of the region will still be quite important, and that will lead to many opportunities. The change in lifestyle will lead to different type of consumption requirements. We also lead to many type of manufacturing, whether in terms of food, say electric vehicle, biotechnology, healthcare, energy, and infrastructure, since that will be the area will have many sophistication developed. Of course, through this, I think the geopolitics will be quite an important aspect in this. Probably, as you asked the question in the earlier session, I think the New World Order probably eventually will be drawn, even though it might be bipolar or multipolar, but eventually there will be some level of connectivity. But at the same time, the level of regionalization and localization will be important to ensure that not just in time, but more like just in case, right? So that I think there will be a balance of the 2, but the domestic economy of the ASEAN will still be an important, and Asia will still be an important part. So I hope that we keep this region to be neutral and independent and be able to serve the requirements of the rest of the world together with the domestic requirements of ASEAN.
Khun Chartsiri, there's absolutely no doubt that Asia is the bright spot. It's going to continue to be a growth engine for the world. And within that, ASEAN will play a very important role. But I want to go back to the point that you raised. It was something that Khun Piti also mentioned about the changing consumption patterns, where arguably younger generations would want to eat more proteins as living standards rise in the world. They want to buy electric vehicles. And again, as I mentioned to Khun Piti as well, we have a war in one part of the world. We arguably had an escalation this morning. We have China increasingly challenging the unipolarity of the US. Is the world we're living in changing? First, that question to you, Khun Chartsiri.
I think the world is changing, right? And the last 40 years, globalization has been the theme, and go for the efficiency. But I think as we move on, as we have evidence from the COVID, so efficiency alone is not enough, but sometimes some level of security is also quite important, because disruption could take place from shutting down of certain factories, or then difficulties in terms of the logistics movement. So I think there will be a balance between globalization efficiency as well as the security and local level of practice. And I think that probably will also create more opportunity on the domestic side of each of the respective countries.
And Khun Pakorn, how should businesses think? How should young business people, as well as entrenched businesses, prepare for this change that thinkers, including Khun Chartsiri, are warning us about?
Very good question. To me, at the moment, the things that I can give advice to them is that nowadays you have a lot of opportunity and you have a lot of channel to raise the funding. If your idea is good, the thing is that how can you get a consistent funding? How do you prove that you have been achieving something so that you can meet the requirement of the person who investing in your business? I think the kids nowadays, they have many good ideas, but the thing that they need to understand also that they need to make the investor understand what they are doing. What is the achievable? What would be the milestone? How would they share the benefit? And what would be the end game? I think those are so important, not just for the new kid, but for all the people who are doing business. But nowadays, to my opinion, they seem to forget that you need to deliver something, not just something that you think is important by yourself.
How do we have a meeting of minds, especially in a region like Asia, where we are seeing generational change, where we are seeing startups led by very young people, where we are arguably going to get into a period where we are going to see massive generational wealth change, where the younger generation will take over inheritances from first-generation businesses. Chartsiri, if I may ask you to take this question first. How are banks like Bangkok Bank positioning for this generational change in a region that's going to be at the forefront of this push?
Family business is something that we value a great deal, and the change from one generation to another can lead to both opportunities and challenges. So how can we best provide support to them? Normally, the second and third generation, they have much better education, also with much better perspective in outlook and so forth. At the same time, also capital from what their parents or their grandparents have built, so they can try on different things, including what you mentioned of the startup. But of course, the challenge is on the management and the scalability, which I think the older generation have. So how to combine the two together in coordination. At the same time, when you go through across different countries, also different levels of development across the economies, and in certain areas, like in pharmaceutical and healthcare, India is also very strong as a leader in that area. In technology management and management, India also very strong. In China, on the consumption and technological advancement, Indonesia also a lot of opportunities in terms of the natural resources, and they have very fertile ground, also plenty of water, so very good in agriculture. Vietnam, very hardworking people, and so forth. So these are different combinations of how do we make sure. So I think the cross-border investments and also collaboration together will increase the nature of the greater understanding, and hopefully that would also provide greater stability in the medium term as well as the business opportunities.
The message coming across is very clear from these sessions that there are so many strengths in this region. We've got to play to the strengths that each of these countries have, with businesses like yours facilitating and guiding the changes that are going to come. Pakorn, final word to you. I asked you previously what excites you the most as well, but I want to drill down into this question. If you look at the regionalization of ASEAN, where do you think you would place your largest investments?
You asked me a very difficult question to answer. In my opinion, like I told you before, diversification is very important. And the story of the investment, to me, is also very important. For example, we just came back from the roadshow for the ASEAN Exchange in New York City. Interestingly, each of the exchange tell the story totally different. For Thailand, we are talking about sustainability. We are talking about the industry that are very strong and has been improving using digital technology. Singapore talk about the banking sector, financial sector, talking about the port, the read on the port. Malaysia talking about the plantation, talking about the petrochemical business. Indonesia talking about startup. Philippines talking about their new business in their country. I think this is the fascinating story. It doesn't have to be one country that you only focus on, but it's more like in the area. For example, in ASEAN, I think there are so many compelling stories that you can talk to the investor that they don't know yet. For example, when we went there and we talk about the story in each of our country, the investor was like intriguing because wow, we never heard about this, and this is so interesting that you are so complementary to each other. So this is one of the stories that I would say, diversification and believe in story.
Diversification in a changing world. Lots of opportunities, but as Kun Chartsiri also said, some challenges as well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your engaging conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.